Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 5 of season 2 of Arrow called League of Assassins. Now, this video might be a little shorter than I would like it to be. I've actually got a bit of a sore throat, so after I do this video, I'm actually going to have to take a break from recording reviews for a couple of days to let my throat get back to 100%, but I will be doing I will make up all of my missed reviews. I just really didn't want to miss this one because it's a really good episode, and like I mentioned last week, I'm really excited about what's going on with me and the folks at DC Comics News. So anyway, let's get right into things. Overall, not quite as wild and crazy as last week's episode. This episode, a little bit more surprisingly on the quiet side, but this is really just a deal with the fallout of what happened last time around. And I love the fact that the show does that, and it continues to propel things forward in some really interesting ways. Now, let's just kind of get the small stuff out of the way. We don't really learn very much more about what's going on with Moira. It's just the stage is set for her to eventually be willing to come clean with Oliver and Thea. Now, I can kind of understand why she might not have wanted to do that there in the prison visitors room, but clearly some nasty stuff is going to come out, and at this point, you really got to wonder if maybe Moira knew more about what was going on with Malcolm than we had previously thought, or maybe this has nothing to do with Malcolm. Maybe it has something to do with Robert, or it could just be something completely out of the blue. But nonetheless, Moira knows some nasty stuff. And if it's enough that she's afraid that her kids might stop loving her after this, after if they were to find out, whatever it is has got to be a doozy, huh? Also, some really nice stuff with Thea. I loved how she kind of says to her mom, like, who do you think you raised? If you think that we could ever stop loving you, then you don't really know us at all. And man, what a great moment for Thea. She has really stepped up as a character this season. The writers have done not that they didn't do right by her last season, but this season, yeah, Thea, like so many other characters on the show, has really, really improved. Although, frankly, so far this season, I gotta say that the most improved character so far has got to be Detective Lance. Oh man, Paul Blackthorne, dude, I love you, man. You are just absolutely amazing this episode. I didn't really think he would be able to quite top that Alcoholics Anonymous scene last episode, but man, just his interaction with Sarah, just his absolute heartbreak, and his pain at not being able to tell Laurel the truth about her sister. And, of course, Detective Lance took down one of the League of Assassins. He got to have his badass moment and even fired off a funny one-liner. Honestly, the only real complaint I have about Detective Lance this episode is, considering what they went through last year with, trying to stop the earthquake device together, you'd think that he wouldn't be quite so quick to dismiss Felicity, especially when she came to him saying something crazy. I mean, earthquake machine. That sounds pretty crazy, but yeah, it's for real. And, Malcolm Merlyn, did murder all those cops single-handedly. I mean, I am remembering last season correctly, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So, yeah. And now, granted, okay, like I think I've said what I have to say there. Although I definitely did like seeing Quentin and Felicity interact. They have an interesting dynamic. Let me see here. Yeah. Let's deal with the flashback stuff real quick. Okay, Dr. Ivo, character from the comics. Well-known mad scientist guy in the comics. In the comics, he has a fondness for creating super intelligent super androids with superpowers that, in one way or another, tend to go wrong. One of them, of course, being called Amazo. I'm actually a little annoyed with myself for not putting it together that he would be on that ship. I kind of thought the ship would be going to some island where he was hanging out doing his Island of Dr. Moreau thing. But, okay, this makes perfect sense. Now, the question, of course, is what does he want with Sarah? Well, we don't know. But, we know that Sarah ends up with some ties to the League of Assassins, and that Ivo was talking about, he wants to help save the human race. Well, saving the human race in a way that's really, really bad for the vast majority of the human race is kind of the shtick of Ra's al Ghul. So, you gotta wonder if those two don't have a connection. And thinking on it, I can kind of see why Sarah might say to Oliver, prisoners are not allowed to speak when they're reunited. If they find out that Oliver has some kind of a connection to her, that could be potentially very bad for both her and Oliver. It's something that they could use against her. Now, granted, that's just speculation, but yeah. Let me see here. Just kind of looking over my notes real quick. One thing that I really like is that they do mention that Laurel being on the prosecuting team, going against Moira, would be a conflict of interest. Well, if you paid attention to my reviews last year, you know I complained endlessly about the whole conflict of interest of Quentin Lance being the guy that's always coming around to question the queens about stuff. And they basically just pay lip service to it and then quickly dismiss it in a way that's complete and utter BS. But at least they acknowledge it. I like to think the writers sort of noticed that the fans were calling nonsense on that, and decided, okay, let's do a little tip of the hat in that direction. Now, another thing is that Sarah mentions seeing shadow in the hood. Now, I kind of mentioned earlier that Oliver was not the first person to wear the hood, and that was, of course, Yao Fei. So, it now looks like he might have actually been the third, the hood, shall we say, which is certainly interesting. And of course, this clues us into the fact that Sarah at some point met both Slade and Shadow. So, interesting stuff there. Let me see. Again, more nice scenes with Oliver and his mom. Those two really do have a great chemistry together, and you can really see when he's interacting with Moira just where Oliver gets some of that inner strength, and that conflicted moral compass. In a way that they're two people who are, even though Moira doesn't realize it, she and her son are far more alike than she could have ever possibly imagined. Of course, which makes the whole thing of Moira Queen, you have failed this city, in retrospect, seem even more interesting, really, to me. And again, sorry if this is a little disjointed. I'm trying to get through a lot of stuff before my throat goes south on me. Let me see here. Let me see. Oh yeah. Also, this episode, if I can pop back to Detective Lance in a minute, I really love how he's able to very quickly put together what's going on with Sarah. He may have been busted down. Wait, why do they keep calling him Detective Lance? I mean, didn't even his name tag say Detective when she was talking to Felicity? Am I the only one that noticed that? Didn't he get busted down to officer? In fact, didn't that jerk supervisor guy even make it a point of calling him Officer Lance? I mean, am I remembering this correctly? If so, Quentin, you probably should take that detective names tag off your uniform, or I'm pretty sure the police departments are rather serious on their protocols in that regard. Now, Laurel, let's talk about her really quickly. I wasn't too happy with the way Laurel was acting at the early part of this episode. She's continues to be kind of rude to her father. Oliver comes by, and granted, she's in a tough position there, and I can kind of understand how she didn't want to have to deal with the uncomfortable situation of Oliver, maybe coming in there and trying to work something out with her. Now, it does, of course, speak well to Laurel's character that she did use what little influence she had in the DA's office to try and get Moira a deal that would not send her to death row. But, just the way that she kind of came across there, and especially with the whole thing with trying to kiss Oliver and then really kind of throwing it back in his face when he's kind of said no, even though them not really having a relationship. I mean, wasn't that kind of Laurel's idea last time around? I don't know. But yeah, by the time it turns around to the last episode where she says, I don't know if I'm all right anymore, basically, that really redeemed it quite a bit in my eyes. You know, it shows that Laurel is just a person who's lost and confused and trying to find some firm ground from where she can start building a new path. And that bit where she goes, sooner or later everybody I care about leaves me all alone. Give Katie Cassidy some credit there. She did that scene really, really well. And again, she's another person. The writers have really stepped up with throwing good stuff her way, and as an actress, she's stepped up there and has been pretty consistently delivering. Now, of course, the real star of this show, though, I mean this episode, I should say, is of course Katie Lotz as Black Canary, or Sarah, whatever. First of all, I like how they explain why in the world she's running around with a name like Canary. I mean, granted, she never really refers to herself. She's just like, okay, that was basically my old League of Assassins code name. But still, it's sort of, they've introduced why she might refer to herself as Canary in a reasonable and logical way. And if she, at some point in the future, wants to slap black on there to symbolize a transformation, I could see that, the same way that Oliver might slap green on that new name that he's picked up. At least from Quentin Lance, anyway. Wouldn't that be interesting? If you stop and think about it, it seems like Oliver's destiny is to have a code name that comes from both Quentin Lance and Malcolm Merlyn. Two people who at the start of the show were the vigilante and Oliver Queen's strongest nemesis for all intents and purposes. Ironic, huh? But anyway, yeah, first of all, really some serious props to Katie Lotz. She's really doing a great job as Sarah. I was a little bothered by that, gratuitous scene of her back while she was putting on her shirt. I mean, they literally, this is completely framed between Diggle and Oliver, and jeez. I mean, yes, she's a very pretty lady, but come on, guys. You've done so great with the female characters on this show. We really, really did not need that, especially in an episode where Flashback Sarah is running around in, at best, a dressing gown. And at worst, she's running around in wet underwear. I guess Sarah's pretty lucky that stuff wasn't sheer. But hey, this is network television, right? Not Showtime. Oh boy, I don't want to think about what this show would be like if it was on Showtime. I mean, come on, geez, do you remember how much nudity there was in the first couple of seasons of Dexter? Whew, gratuitous. Let me see here. But yeah, definitely she was, Katie Lotz, going back to her, absolutely did great in the action scenes. That scenes between her and her dad, just the vulnerability and the pain and the conflict. Beautiful. Beautiful. And not a huge amount to say about, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the guy's name in Arabic. We're just going to refer to him as the First. And if I remember correctly, this is the name, this is the Ra's al Ghul's #1 lieutenant does have a history of running around with that name. So that's cool. I totally did not expect him to die this episode. I honestly thought that we were potentially looking at this guy as maybe being the big bad of the season, and then maybe next year they bring in Ra's al Ghul. But yeah, apparently not. So who knows what's going to happen there? Maybe we'll see Ra's al Ghul, maybe we won't. I don't know. Either way, cool stuff. So overall, folks, and again, my voice is really not doing me, is basically telling me that I need to kind of knock off for the night now. So again, I apologize if this is not quite up to my usual standards. But anyways, guys, overall, good, fun episode. Lots of really great acting. Lots of really great writing. I just want to leave you with one more thing. At the beginning, when Sarah's hanging out at Oliver's mansion, is there no staff at that mansion anymore? Did Oliver just send everybody home? I mean, don't some of the servants usually live in the mansion too? Whatever. Anyway, guys, until next time, take care and have a good one.